Well, actually, you took away all my punchlines because I didn't know you were going to be introducing me. So I thought you were going to be like the secret guy over there. Then I'll be like, and that's my brother. But anyway, that's not true. This is actually my first meeting where I have a microphone. Not meeting, speaker, where I'm the speaker at the meeting. So I can imagine if you guys have done this before, maybe a little terrified like myself, but I'm gonna be calm and everything's gonna be good. And if I pause and wait for you guys to do something, that means you laugh, okay? Look, I have hello. I'm Susan. I'm an alcoholic. Just in case I got up here and blanked out. Anyway, me and Chuck prayed back there, so got that one. My sober date is December 14th of 2009, and I'm divorced. I work for my ex-husband. No shit, right? I took a long. I'm going to get into that. But anyway, so there's no commingling there. I sell alcohol for a living today. Have done it for over 20 years. I'll get to that. Let's see, what else on the list? All right, so I have a brother. He's 18 months older than me. Made us a grade apart, him being a grade ahead of me. I was that little sister that wanted to tag along and do everything. I have a biological dad. I have an adopted dad. I have a mom. They're all still living, and we're all doing great together. I have 3 dogs, no children. I have a boyfriend of 8+ years, and if you do the math, I've been sober about 7 years, so there's some story to that too. So let's see, where do I want to go with this? Let's turn this page over. All right. I'm very honored, that's what this says, to be here tonight. Thank you for asking me to speak, and damn you for asking me to speak. I grew up, this is my hometown. I grew up in Pinehurst. I went to Pinehurst Middle School, Pinecrest High School, Sandhills Community College. I was one of those late bloomers. I had my first drink when I was 15, but it seemed like there's some history where I was born in Athens, Georgia. I have a biological side of the family. That's where the alcoholism comes from, if anybody believes that it's hereditary, which some of us don't have that and don't know why we're an alcoholic, but, it's not that I'm trying to figure out why. I've got it, so, that's why I'm here. Born in Athens, Georgia. Before I got to Pinehurst, my mom and dad at the time were the very first memory that I have of them being together. It was pretty chaotic. If we do the math, my mom and dad got married when they were 19. They had my brother when they were 20. They had me when they were 23. And my dad was in college. And I know that when I went away to school, or even when I went to Sandhills, just even that little bit of freedom was where I was like, something can do me right with this kind of freedom and being able to drink and feeling comfortable in my own skin. Looking back, it was as if I didn't know what it was at the time, but it was the fact that I just wasn't comfortable just being me. And it's not that I knew that then, I just knew I had these things. I mean, I sucked my thumb until I was in the 5th grade. I believed in Santa Claus, although I blame that on Ashley, because everybody told me there wasn't a Santa Claus, and I was like, I would go home and, I'd be like, is it true? Is it true? And Ashley would look at me. I looked up to him, so I'm like, you'll tell me, right? And he's like, Susan, you're a dumbass if you think there's no Santa Claus. And I'm like, that's right. That's what I want to hear. So I was always that, always trying to catch up, to everybody else. I was a late bloomer in high school. I was, nothing filled out up here until I was like a junior. Now I have to say that I did start kindergarten when I was 5 years old. And my grandparents on my mom's side of the family were in the teacher industry. My granddaddy was superintendent of schools. My grandmother was a science teacher. My aunt was a first grade teacher. So I think that, they had some play to get me out of the house. And it was like, get her on that bus. Wasn't like I started school because I was, had that extra smart gene. But anyway, so that's, where am I going with that? All right, so my very first memory, in life, I remember I was 3 years old, and I was in the oxygen tent at whatever hospital I was at. And I remember I was 3 years old because of when I had this thing, and also I had a staph infection that actually I still have a scar on my cheek from that visit. They didn't give you the temperature in your mouth. I remember that, going, hey, what's up? Hey, girl. Anyway, so then in our I also remember, though, when it was time for Mom to, say, hey, it's time to go home. We're going to go see your daddy. And I just remember that fear. I wasn't beaten or anything, but just that was when Daddy was coming into his alcoholism. That was when he was starting to venture that part of his life. And I know from my experience, when I had a little too much to drink, I wasn't a very nice person. And I would try to kick. You could be my best friend in the world, but all of a sudden, we could be sitting there and I'd be like, what? And you feel like, I didn't say anything. And I'd be like, really? And then all of a sudden I'd be swinging at you. So, it definitely is a sickness, and I understand that now. And it's way better relationship with my biological dad, and I love him so much. And I'm so glad that I know now about the sickness and that he didn't have any control over that. But going back to that Georgia thing, before we came to Pinehurst, we moved to Pinehurst because my mom remarried, but I'll get to that. So in Pinehurst, in Georgia, the town where we're from is called Hickory Flat. So as far as our family tree is concerned, I'm not talking for Ashley here, but my cranium's pretty large. That family tree maybe forked a little bit. Kidding. So, this was the kind of we went to visit my biological dad every other weekend. And so it was like once a month we would have turtle stew. And what that means is that the boys would go out to the lake behind the house. They had these empty gallons that were like the hooks for the turtles, and the turtles would get caught, and then they would go get the ones that were to the side of the lake. If you don't know what the hell this is, I'm explaining. This is country, southern. We're going to make use of these animals here, and we're going to cook them, and we're going to eat them. So when they would get the turtle, these turtles were huge. They're like this big. They would have, animal lovers. I'm an animal lover, and this was just part of my life. So I didn't look at it as inhumane. I looked at it as like we're having turtle stew today. So, but the bottom line is that, my granddaddy and all the men folk would be like, y'all need to stay clear here because that's, we're getting ready to clean this turtle, and that turtle head's going to still be active and will bite your hand off. And I know that me and Ashley used to be like, all right, but go grab a stick to see whoever the turtle latched to, would be like the winner, and also got their ass kicked. But still, it was like, yeah, I got the turtle would latch onto anyway. So I thought everybody had turtle stew once a month like that, because that's how I grew up. On my mom's side of the family, I told you about the teacher thing. I remember this one day, I'm probably in the first grade, and there's like 5 bedrooms in this house, but 1 bathroom. And there's a latch on the outside of the door, because that's where you went. You know, my mom's, we called her Mumsy. We called her the Mums, because she was very strict. But if we got out of line, you know, we'd be sent into the bathroom to think about what we had done. Well, on this particular day, me and my Aunt Judy got sent into the bathroom, and something was going on outside, and we didn't know what was up, except my Aunt Judy, who is a year younger than my mother. She never had children, and she's very sweet, and I love her very much, but I do like to make fun just a little bit. But she's very dramatic. I mean, very, you know, if there was a piece of dynamite right there, me and her would be standing there, and she'd be taking off first. And I'd be like, where are you going? You know, so we were in the bathroom, and she's like yelling and, you know, like, we're going to die. Oh, my God, it's so terrible. Well, I didn't know what was up. So it turns out later that my granddaddy, who was superintendent of schools, there was a white boy and a black boy who got in a fight. And the white boy was at fault, so he got expelled. And I guess the KKK decided to pay us a visit on that day, and we had to wait for the cops to get there and the cross to be burned on the tree, and once that was all over, we could come out. So, but that tree burned for days. I thought it was the prettiest thing in the world. I'm like, it was like a magic moment, like, Jesus is real. You know, I'd be like, Mom, can I go out and look at that cross tonight? And she'd be like, go ahead, baby. So anyway, so I'm just giving you a little history about, you know, how kind of secluded we were. But 2, it's also the same with that alcoholism. You know, this is Southern Baptist. I mean, this is hellfire damnation. This is yelling preachers, you know, that are screaming at you. And there's not a nursery to go to. You're sitting there listening to that you're going to hell. You know, so that was my first, you know, kind of connection with what God was about. And it was, alcohol wasn't even an option. I mean, that was the devil's like, what is that noise? Okay. All right. Sorry. Anyway, so as far as like, you know, my dad trying to find an answer to this disease, it was not even talked about. You know, he had this thing, but it was all about hiding it. It was about, you know, any consequences he had. You know, either my granddaddy got him out of it, you know, by trying to make it go away. But as far as like going to a meeting and admitting you're an alcoholic in this town, I mean, you're a sinner. You're going to hell. That's not the way it's going to happen. So I hate that he didn't have this like we do. And my heart just goes out to him because he's so much better than he used to be, but he still struggles with it because it's not something that he was able to get. But anyway, so my mom remarried and we moved up to Pinehurst. And the new dad, because of the circumstances going on with the biological dad, because he was still in his addiction, you know, say that if something happened to my mom, you know, then we would have to go back and live in that environment. So the new dad is wanting to adopt us, and that's what I needed. I needed something that I wasn't scared of. I was scared of him. You know, he kind of had to make me do things like all I wanted to do is stay at home. I didn't want to go spend the night over at people's houses. There was one girl that lived down the road, but I knew I could ride my bicycle home, and that was okay to spend the night over there. But if anybody had any sleepovers, I was not going because I was scared of wanting to go home and be fearful of their dad or what's going to happen that I don't have any control over. So I was pretty much wanting to be wherever Mom was, you know, because she was always the one who, you know, got us to a safe place. And Ashley's role in that was that he's 18 months older than me, and it was whenever anything, like if the biological dad was screaming and pounding the walls or, just going crazy, he was the one who came over and took me to a safe room, until Mom could get to us to get out. So that was, I remember asking Mom, I'm like, so do you have to get married? I mean, I had baby dolls. I wanted to have a baby, so I thought in first grade. But I didn't want to have that husband thing because I didn't, that was scary to me. So I'm like, so, me and Ashley get along, right? Anyway, that was way before I understood anything about that. But it was very disappointing. I was very upset. Oh my gosh, got to meet some stranger. Anyway, so on to the next path. So high school. High school was terrifying to me. My mom loved high school. I mean, she was a cheerleader. Biological dad loved high school. He was a football player. My brother loved high school. He was the man. And I rode on his coattails because I'm like, okay, I feel awkward, inadequate. But if I'll be your buddy. Yes, I'm Ashley's sister. And yeah, if you like him, then we're good, right? So that being said, too, I wanted to do everything that Ashley did. Like when Ashley went to work at McDonald's to, buy his first car, I wanted to go work at McDonald's. And then my parents told me I couldn't go work at McDonald's, that I'd be staying out too late, and I'm a girl. And that was very upsetting to me. So I paid them all back, and so Ashley went off to college. I followed him there. I actually started working at this country club. I went to work there. Ashley jumped out of an airplane. I jumped out of an airplane. I'm like, he didn't have his own. I'm like, hey, man, if you say it's okay, I'm with you. So, that, and two, when Ashley left to go to college, he left right. He didn't go to Sand Hills. I had a SAT score that had 3 digits and began with an 8, and I think that's what they give you to sign your name. But, I needed to settle. I didn't want to go away yet. I was like, okay, I still want to stay at home. I'm not comfortable leaving. Don't want to be homesick. So it took me 3 years to get a 2-year degree. And then I was ready to go follow the boy to Greensboro. There was my first arrest, I have to say, was when he was a freshman in college, and we were out, and I had my car at the time, and we were going to a cigarette party, and we were having a great time, and I had a flat tire, and so driving really slow, and this guy says, "Hey, you got a flat tire?" I'm like, "No shit, dumbass. I mean, I'm driving really slow, I know." And then, brother jumps out of the car, and he was like, "It's my sister you're calling a bitch." I'm like, "Oh, here we go." So I get out, and so they're not doing much of anything, but when the first punch went, I was like, "It's on," and I jumped on the guy's back, and I was punching him on the head, and, I was 17 years old, though. So when we all got arrested, the guy and him were going back to where, 18 and above go. And I was still thinking, that I'm just there just to wait for them to get out. Talking to the guy, saying, please don't write my brother's citation. Oh gosh, it's going to be hell at the house. And he kept asking me my name, my information. I'm like, why do you want to know my stuff? He said, "Ma'am, I'm writing you this citation." I was like, what? What about my brother? Anyway, but got home and told Mom about it. And Mom was like, "All right, I'm going to get an attorney. This is what we're going to do. We're not going to tell your dad about it." And I'm like, cool. So that's kind of like the way it works. Mom would get us out of stuff. Dad would be the last guy to know. So it was that kind of enabling, now looking back, I didn't have to deal for a lot of my consequences because I would go to Mom. She was, whatever it was, whether it was the guilt or whether that was just the way that she dealt with things, she just wanted to handle it and not create any conflict with the home place in Pinehurst. So very loving sweetheart. She's my heart. But that was her role. So I've learned. But anyway, so I went to college. That was a mess. But I cheated my way through college because I didn't want to do the work to actually pass college. So I had a person in every class who would do my homework for me. And I would party, they would do my homework, and somehow I made it through. I got a 4-year degree in 6 years, and I couldn't tell you what 10 times 100 was. I remember somebody asked me that in class, and I was like, $100,000? Anyway, so, but after that, I went back to work in the food and beverage industry. This I went seeking on my own. My brother had already gone and gotten married and stuff like that. So I was in Greensboro still doing that food and beverage thing, and that's when life started becoming, I didn't have an excuse of college anymore. I mean, it was like, this is my life. If you've ever waited tables and that kind of industry, is like you are who you work with, and most everybody drinks. Nobody is up that late at night except for you and who you're working with, and you're going to go get loaded after work. And the one thing I knew for certain is that I just needed to be able to sleep with my boss and make sure that I had something on him, because I knew I would mess up and not show up for work on time, and then that would balance that situation out. So that manipulation was, and it worked. So I'm like, this is great. Worked for a minute until it just got too uncomfortable. I actually wanted to go on dates with single guys. And he was married, sorry. So I used to always talk about how I wouldn't steal anything from you, and somebody would be like, well, you slept with somebody else's man. And I'm like, and it's like, but it didn't belong to you. And it was a very humbling moment. So it's the truth. And so I moved back home to Pinehurst to sell real estate with my parents, and thinking everything was going to be just like it was when I left. And I came back and nothing was like it was when I left. It was very lonely. I was still drinking, but I was drinking by myself. I remember going out with this guy, and I was having a miserable time. I was at the Pinehurst Hotel, and I was sitting there, and this was when you could smoke cigarettes inside, because I remember I was sitting there smoking, going, oh, God, what am I going to do later? And I see this girl walking by, and she was very pretty. I could tell she might not be straight, and I was thinking, I haven't tried that yet. I tried a lot of things, but I had not tried that yet. So as I'm eyeing the situation and trying to do my hey girl, we got the eye contact going on, but then I'm thinking I'm over here alone. I'm stealing all the Pinehurst Hotel matches. I had my little purse open, and I'm shoving them all in, and she comes walking up, and she's like, hey, I can give you a whole box back here. And I was like, sorry, I'm getting these for a friend. Anyway, but I was trying to do my smooth talking, and maybe I could try this thing one night, so it was another humbling experience that I wasn't the only heterosexual female trying to get with her. It was like everybody wanted to try it. It's like, hey, so now I'm in for the chase. So I'm like, oh, it's you're going to be mine, girl. And so it was like, she said, hey, listen, we're doing a softball team for Mulligan's. I don't know if any of you guys remember Mulligan's Bar, which is at the Manor, which the Manor's closed, and I don't know what all that stuff. It used to be a bar, hangout, and they had a softball team. And I was like, hell yeah, I'll play softball. I didn't play softball. My brother would take me outside when nobody else was around, because he'd want to go throw the football or whatever. And just one day, he was like, all right, hold mitt right here. So I did. And he threw the ball and popped my lip. So that's about the experience I had playing softball. So she put me in center field. I know now that center field is like the Mac Daddy spot. And everybody was aiming for me, So, and something about that ball coming, it's right here. But then it's like 100 feet behind me, and I'd be running, going this way, But then she put me in right field. So I don't know if you guys know about right field, but right field is for shitty players. I didn't know that either until somebody said, "Do you play right field?" You said you're a shitty player, and I'm like, "Hey, wait a minute." So anyway, ended up, I succeeded. I won the task, and then now I'm buying a townhome with this girl, and I'm digging the lifestyle. I mean, it's like everything's like just really secret, and drinking and partying, and it's just fun. And I think that it's like, well, that's the answer. I've been a lesbian all my life, and I'm doing this thing, and I'm not going to tell my parents. I'm not going to do any of that, but I'm just trying to figure it out. I had a lot of panic attacks over that, actually. When I won, I'm like, yeah, I won. Oh my God, I won. And then so after like a year and a half of that, then everything started becoming real again. Every relationship I had started, after that first little entry and excitement was over, whoever was with me wasn't drinking with me like that anymore. It's like the courtship is over, so that happened there too. And I was like, holy crap, I'm not a lesbian. I want out. She's trying to get me sober. And that was pissing me off. So into that relationship where we bought a townhome together, and I'm like, I'm getting ready to jump. And so I jumped into the first male situation I had next. And of course I didn't do the right thing and break up with anybody. I just kept, from one thing, I set up the next round, did the next round, and then I got tired and set up the next round. Then I jumped, so I was always taken care of, with my new life coming, because this situation that I had after her, he was drinking like me too. I'm like, we opened up 5 bottles in one night of wine, and I'm like, we're getting married. And we did. We got married. And 3 years into that, I was still the biggest drinker. I was still, after he would go to bed, not to say I'm not judging him on his alcoholism or whatever, but I did pick him for a reason. And we were compatible, and it's obviously my ex-husband who I work for now. And so when it got to the point to where we stayed married for 6 years, and 3 years into the relationship, I'm the worst. I was the worst girlfriend. I was the worst wife. I would do what I wanted to do. I wouldn't come home when I was supposed to come home. There's a lot of times when I just decided not to show up one night and expected, I would turn the fight back on you and be like, I don't know why you're so mad, because if you didn't do this, then I wouldn't have done that. That's just the way I lived. And then I started learning how to drink during the day. And then I thought I found it. It's like that new thing again. I'm like, this is the answer. I feel so much better. I will never have a hangover. And then the husband wasn't liking that. And then I'm trying to make it through his birthday before I'm going to leave that situation, because my drinking was more important. As soon as I left, I forgot. I had a DUI. I got a DUI, and then I got a second DUI, and then I get a third DUI right after I leave. I don't have a babysitter anymore. So happened in just that kind of amount of time where I didn't lose my license immediately. I had lots of consequences. I was going to lose my job because selling alcohol, believe it or not, they got liabilities. You know, if you work for certain companies and you get convicted of a DUI, you can't work there anymore. So I blew a .24 on that last DUI. And I was pretty sober at a .24. And I talked to the officer too, saying, you know, man, you're talking to me. I mean, I know I've had stuff to drink, but a .24, that's 3 times. And he said to me something I'll never forget. I didn't understand what he was saying. I just thought I interpreted it as him calling me a bitch in code. But he said, a .24, it just looks like you have a really high tolerance, and that's not a compliment. And I was like, whatever. So once I got that DUI, prolong, and then I knew it was coming to surface, I knew I was going to lose my job. So that's when I called up the ex-husband, manipulation again. You know, hey, I told him the truth for once. Told him that I got a DUI. This is what happened. You know, I didn't have you to babysit me anymore. You always wanted me to come work for the competition. So how about now? And he did. So that was... It saved my life, actually. I mean, as much as he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to be my friend. He didn't have to have any part of that. But he did. But that's when he saw how bad I had become. And that's when I realized I'm getting ready to be caught. I'm convicted of a 3rd DUI. And I'm driving around drinking again. And I knew I was sitting in the bar. And I'm going, something's going to give. And I did that prayer. I believed in God, but I had that, you know, hellfire damnation God that I'm just like, he might love you. Everybody tells me, oh, he loves you more than you'll ever know. And I'm like, no, he loves you more than you'll ever know. He doesn't love me because I was too special to be fixed. And I made a prayer in the Big Easy, downtown Raleigh on Fayetteville Street. And I'm like, Lord, if you can get me sober somehow without me losing my job, killing anybody, getting another DUI, losing my family. I mean, I just, you know, well, I got interventioned at work. I was for sure, I mean, I had shown my ass this weekend of this party. I showed up to a meeting with the ex-husband, drunk. He got me out of there without causing a scene. I knew the gig was up, but I was trying to hide just, you know, maybe if I don't show up at the office, they won't call me in, but they did. And I thought I was going to be fired. But I had a black eye. I was one of those drunks that you see on TV, like the real TV where the guy's like trying to do the, you know, and would fall straight on their face without pulling out their hands or anything. That was me. I had so many black and blue situations on my face where somebody would say, is everything okay at home? And because I didn't want to say it was alcohol and somebody go, why the hell didn't you quit drinking? I would just leave it at, like, everything's fine. You know, I would make them believe that maybe something's not okay at home just so you will quit questioning me about the bruises on my face because I really just fell on the ground without my hands. So after that, you know, I got the intervention and thought I was going to be fired. But they gave me, you can walk now or you can get help. And they didn't give me they didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. My job was my higher power at that time, and then I had something to prove. So that's when I actually went to an outpatient facility 3 nights a week, 6 to 9 p.m., I thought they were going to send me away. I'm glad they didn't because it worked, whatever it was. But I was even thinking 6 to 9, 3 nights a week, I don't have time for that. But man, I had a lot of time, 6 to 9, 3 nights a week. There was so much time on my hands. I didn't know what to do with it. My first trigger I had was 60 days into my sobriety. And they kept asking me an outpatient, you know, what are you going to do when the urge to drink is something you can't control? And I was like, I'm fine. I'm like, I can do that. I mean, I said, the only way I would drink is if somebody kidnapped my mom and had a gun to her head and said, you got to drink a glass of Chardonnay. And I'd be like, okay. That would be the only way. But I hadn't had my first trigger yet. And I didn't know what was my trigger. And it was anxiety, panic attack. It was that feeling of, closing in. And it happened to me. And that's the first thing I wanted to do was drink. And I still wine for a living, so it's not like I had 5 minutes to ride to the store. I had it in my back seat. Don't know how. I mean, it was God. I mean, everything that's happened to me is God. I've done nothing except just finally open my heart and know that He loves me and that I'm not that special. But I'm special as far as, helping another person. I mean, that's my whole purpose. I found my purpose. I didn't think I could ever have a good time anymore. I thought of not drinking. How are you going to have fun? I felt so uncomfortable being sober. I was uncomfortable in that, whatever it was. If you can identify it early, then great. But it's like, now looking back, hell, my drink back then was a box of Oreo cookies. That gave me a high. I'd go. I remember Matthew's Market. It's over where Manny's, whatever. Maxie's. Thank you. Over there, I'd ride my bike over there. My parents had, they worked all day, so if we needed any groceries, I'd ride my bike over there. Well, I'd go get a half pound of M&Ms, a thing of Oreo cookies, cereal, milk, and try riding back with that thing, on your bicycle with that milk hitting. But I'm like, I'm going to eat all this when I get home. And I would. I'd be sick as hell. But that was my thing. I mean, looking back, it's like I didn't have an off button to that either. So when I quit drinking, I became pre-diabetic in 6 years. So I haven't had sugar since January 13th, cupcake, that kind of thing. Because I know one bite, and that thing's on. That's how it is for me. I have people who are like, I made this, just take a bite. And I'm like, it's like somebody offering me a drink right now. And I'm like, you don't understand. Leave me the F alone, bitch. Anyway, but I mean, these are my, Eve, I swear, at work, she's like, here, just have one. I'm like, but she doesn't get it because she's not me. She's not one of us. But anyway, so where am I? Oh, I have a boyfriend we got together 2 years of partying and stuff like that. They got us together because he was Wild Man Bill. I was Crazy Susan. It was awesome. Until, Wild Man Bill stayed sober in hopes that Crazy Susan would call and tell me where the hell she is. And I just abused the hell out of everybody in my life. And when I got into sobriety, it wasn't done. I mean, I was still special. I mean, my first meeting, outpatient, they try to steer you into AA. They try to get you to that place. So, went to my first AA meeting. I was 59 days sober, but it was my first meeting. So, I was there with a buddy she was shy. So, when they said, if you like what you heard, you want to walk with us one day at a time, come get a white chip. And I ran up there because I'm Susan, and I'm like, hey, I'm here, y'all. And I asked the guy, his name is Tyrone. He gave me my white chip, and I'm like, thank you. And I said, can I get another one? And he's like, sure. And so I grabbed it. Here you go. Gave it to my girlfriend. I had no idea. But that was my first. Now, what comes next is at 59 days sober. Well, I wasn't going to be there for my 60-day chip. So he said, anybody got 60 days? I went back up. And I'm like, Tyrone, give me another chip. And he's like, keep coming back. And I'm like, joke. Give me my damn chip. And he's like, keep coming back. I can't tell you how mad I got. I was like, I'm going to go get those 2 white chips and I'm going to aim at your fucking head. And I'm going to treat you so hard that you're going to wish you gave me that chip. And I walked back and I couldn't see straight. I was so embarrassed, ashamed, humiliated. How dare you? And then, so after the meeting, like, this one little woman came up and her name's Sharon. Thanks for sharing, Sharon. Anyway, I'll say that to her now. Anyway, I'm looking at that clock. Anyway, so she came up to me and her and Kathy, they're like, Kathy's trying to be nice and make me feel better. I can't, all I'm seeing is red. We're in a little church and it's half the size of this. And all I could think of is if I were Carrie, I would shut everybody in there and I would blow torch it up and everybody would burn to death and I would be okay with that. And she said, codependent. I didn't know what the hell that meant. I thought she called me bitch. So I ended up, my lipstick is falling out of my bra. Sorry. I forgot where I was. So anyway, that was my first thing on humility. And that bitch named Sharon became my sponsor, and we worked some steps together. And I can't tell you, working the steps with somebody like that, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. She was like saying, "Do you, after your fifth step, don't you feel like you're floating, your out of body experience?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's like I'm sitting next to myself driving down the road." And I was like, I feel that way, but I wanted you to hear what you wanted to hear. But it was when I worked with somebody else that was when I really worked the steps. Was when I actually had an accountability for somebody else going through the steps. That's when I really did the steps. And that's what I've been doing. It's not like I go seeking anybody out. They just show up. And that's why I still sell alcohol, because there are a lot of alcoholics in this industry, and God, I guess, chose me, or he had to have, or I wouldn't be doing it if I couldn't make it. But I just had somebody I met through a restaurant. Either I'm like trying to get you drunk, and then you say you think you might have a drinking problem, then I'll take it away and be like, so, tell me more, you know? And this guy last night, he got kicked out of his house. I took him to detox, and it's things like that. I wouldn't have known him unless I had this job. 2 other people, it hasn't worked yet completely, but if for some reason there's a seed planted because of that, and I don't have to know about it, but if I can help in that kind of area, then that's my purpose. And that's all I got, y'all. Any questions? Okay, good.